We are going to be joined this morning early by Nomiki Konst. She is a progressive journalist, activist, organizer, and commentator from the Nomiki Show. She is going to join us on Solidarity Wednesdays. Every Wednesdays, we are looking to form and strengthen alliances, existing alliances, because one thing I can tell you for certain, the fights that we're fighting in this country cannot be won in isolation. There are quite a few divisions in this big camp. I don't mean the big D Democratic camp. I mean the people of good faith who are trying to win victories on behalf of justice, on behalf of liberation. None of those fights are going to be victorious by ourselves. Black people can't win those fights by ourselves. We simply cannot. We need allyship. We need people that we can trust, and we need co-conspirators. We need people who would be on the front lines with us. And obviously, we know that has not been historically the case in this country. But forgetting those things which are behind, we've got work to do. We have insurrectionists, terrorists who want to overthrow this country for the sake of white supremacy. They are unapologetic about their goals. They're very clear about their goals. And so we must have solidarity on our side because they have solidarity on their side, and they're fighting like hell for all of the wrong reasons. And so I encourage us to fight like hell for all of the right reasons. So Nomiki Konst is going to be joining us later on in this first half hour, coming up at the 8:30. At the half hour mark, we'll be joined by Georgia Fort for On the Clock. And as always, we'll be joined by DJ Exclusive and Rebecca Zor for Like It or Not. A lot of stuff happening this morning. I do want to bring attention to what's happening in Bessemer, Alabama. This is one of the things we're going to talk about with Nomiki. Okay, we have Nomiki. Well, good morning and welcome. Nomiki, how are you? Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning. It's nice to see you, Ben. I'm really excited about this, and well said. Oh my God. Very
Absolutely.
Well said.
You know, and I'm dressed the part. I said, you know, let me not throw on a suit and a blazer this morning. Let me throw on my Solidarity hoodie. And it's also just a great excuse to not have to get properly dressed for this morning show. But at the end of the day, we got to get into the streets. We've got to organize, because you study what's happening on the right very diligently. You know what's happening with Steve Bannon and all of the reactionaries across the globe they have solidarity. They're united. Mm-hmm. They have a cause. And it's like on our side of the equation, it's sometimes iffy. What are your thoughts?
Mm-hmm. You know, I think that we get into this pattern on the left of thinking that the left always eats itself. But I think part of the reason, and it's not because we have so much diversity of ideas and backgrounds on the left. I think that's some of it. But I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we're not studying our history. Most of us aren't studying our history. And at this moment in particular, we have weakened our muscles when it comes to organizing, partly because the right wing has almost, has attempted to annihilate the labor movement. And so when people aren't in labor, they're not practicing their organizing skills, and they're not practicing solidarity because it's not part of their day-to-day activity. I think we're getting better. Right. I think obviously what we're seeing in Bessemer is progress. And even if they failed last time and there were some problems, reported last time, it's still inspired so much more, all the Starbucks unions, everything that's happening, across the country. And also the reporting of it, because, I saw somebody report this. It's not that there's more strikes than ever. There actually aren't. It's that reporters are reporting on the strikes.
That's right. Yeah. And that makes all the difference. If the media, because so many people only get their news still from the mainstream media, if they're not reporting on all the many strikes, then the people who are watching it don't know what's happening. I'm reminded of the teacher strikes that occurred before the pandemic. I mean, there were teacher strikes after teacher strikes. And that really, you hit on something. I want to move to Bessemer. You mentioned Bessemer, Alabama. We've been covering this pretty extensively. We spoke with some of the people from the Bamazonians. Those are the Alabama-based Amazon workers and employees who have attempted to unionize. Their first effort in Bessemer failed. There is a revote that's going to happen. And I want us to take a look at this first clip. It's from November 30th, 2021, and it's discussing the U.S. Labor Board officials ordering Amazon to redo the union vote at the Alabama Bessemer warehouse. Let's take a look at that.
A regional director for the U.S. National Labor Relations Board on Monday called for a rerun of a union election at an Amazon facility in Alabama, setting the stage for another high-profile organizing battle at the world's largest online retailer. Workers at the warehouse in Alabama rejected forming a union by a more than 2-to-1 margin in April after an organizing drive that garnered support from U.S. lawmakers and President Joe Biden. In August, an NLRB hearing officer said the company's conduct around the previous vote had interfered with the election. In a statement, Stuart Applebaum, president of the Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union, said, quote, "Today's decision confirms what we were saying all along, that Amazon's intimidation and interference prevented workers from having a fair say in whether they wanted a union in their workplace." In Monday's decision, the NLRB regional director said that Amazon engaged in objectionable conduct that warrants setting aside the election. The decision pointed to moves by the company encouraging staff to vote via a mailbox it had the Postal Service install at its warehouse, surrounding the mailbox with its campaign slogan and locating it where workers may have thought Amazon was monitoring them. The decision for a redo adds pressure on Amazon, which has recently faced union campaigns in New York and Canada. Worker groups view organizing the company as a landmark goal that would invigorate the U.S. labor movement. An Amazon spokesperson said that the company's employees overwhelmingly voted against joining the union this year, adding that it is disappointing that the NLRB has now decided those votes shouldn't count.
Nomiki, you followed it, you covered it, I followed it. We all were paying attention to what was happening in Bessemer, Alabama. One thing we know for sure was that Amazon did everything it could to prevent the successful unionization there. What are your thoughts about the second vote that's coming up?
Well, I hope that RWDSU is really going to take the lessons that they've learned from not just this effort, but previous efforts. I'm cautiously optimistic, partly because, some of the reporting from great reporters like Kim Kelly, who was on the ground out there, interviewing folks, to other labor leaders who said, it was questionable that they chose Bessemer, which is important. Obviously, people of Bessemer want to unionize, and there is a union history in Bessemer, but it's a right to work state. While
that's right,
there's Staten Island, where Stuart Applebaum and RWDSU has a very strong presence in New York City, and it's a union state. Some folks said it might have been easier to do this to start in a place in Staten Island, where tons of people have gotten attention. Chris Smalls, of course, was fired, went straight to management in terms of memos about Chris Smalls as he was calling out how they were protecting workers during the lockdown, specifically during the lockdown. Right. So, I think I'm glad that they're doing it again, and I hope that there are lessons that were learned, and maybe this is also to give good face to RWDSU, who seem to mishandle the last union effort. So I'm not sure. I'm
to be sure, ground, so I can't say. And for the audience, the RWDSU is the Retail, Worker, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. That's in Birmingham, Alabama. That's the union that was organizing there in Bessemer, correct?
Right. And and to make it also clear, there are other unions who, it's from what I understand, when a location, specifically Amazon, wants to unionize, they look around and see which unions are strong in that area that complement. So it's not always that RWDSU is the union associated with Amazon. You have the Teamsters doing a massive union effort in Amazon facilities around the country right now. They've decided to lean in on this. So it really depends on the location, which unions are strong. And again, that goes back to, Republicans have decided, and Democrats, of course, are part of this, but Republicans have completely annihilated unions by taking over state legislatures, creating right to work states.
That's right.
Koch brother funded efforts.
That's right. Alec, Koch brothers. It has been a concerted effort to make this country unpalatable for labor. I want to play this next clip. This next clip is a clip from last year when I was able to speak with several Amazon truck drivers. And based on the story about the urine bottles. Okay. All right. So we won't go to that just yet. But this is the part that I really want to focus on, is the fact that these are real people, Nomiki. I think some of us, we sever our solidarity based on how much we need that product to get to us the next day. right? How much we need that widget to get from Amazon. And then there's a lot of people who really just cut it off and say, well, that's too bad because I really need that TV delivered Amazon Prime the next day. What are your thoughts in terms of the culpability of us as consumers to what the workers are going through?
I think this is a complicated thing for folks on the left because in some situations, boycotting an industry can make a huge difference. The problem with places like Walmart and Amazon is that they have eaten up almost all small business, especially in rural communities, and especially when you're in a lockdown, that, you almost have no choice. It's like when, folks say, well, boycott this, boycott that. It's like, well, where does that end in the society that we live in? We all have iPhones. We are all carrying around, precious metals that were probably in a very inhumane way mined and also affect, geopolitical situations, et cetera. So we're all part of this in some way or form, and we're not even aware of how this, every single piece component in the supply chain, is the humanity connected to it. So with that being said, I think that, if you can go to small businesses, please do. But I don't feel personally, this is my take, I don't feel like we should be making people feel guilty for taking part in a system that is very hard to escape. This is why, it's not about individualism. It's about having real oversight. It's about having a government that holds these companies accountable. I mean, when Walmart swooped into all these towns, and I grew up in one of these small towns, there used to be a vibrant little main street where all the little shops, my dad would tell me these stories about growing up there, and went to the Five and Dine shop, did Five and Dine, none of them were open anymore when Walmart came in. And then now Walmart is, they're still perfectly fine. It's the only game in town. Yeah. Exactly. Now Amazon is that. And of course, Amazon does so much more damage because of the supply chain, environmental consequences of shipping things around. And of course, how they treat their workers. So, this is why it's important not just to have unions, but simultaneously, we can't sit here and think that all of this is dependent on unions. We have to look, especially if you live in a blue state. What are our lawmakers doing? I mean, there are plenty of things in places like New York State and in California, and they have been doing little things here and there that they could be doing to crack down on how workers are being treated. They're breaking the law. Let's be very clear. This isn't about union rights at this point. What they did to Chris Smalls, what they did to so many other people, they broke the labor law and they broke actual laws, and they're not being held accountable.
That's the thing. So Christian Smalls, we've had him on our show. You've had him. And for those of you who don't know, he's a young black man who stood up for the Amazon employees at his warehouse during the beginning of COVID. And he was fired because of his efforts. I want to go to Starbucks now, because Starbucks, they just had a successful unionization effort that took place. And there's another effort that's happening in Cleveland, Ohio, that's going on this week, or starting this week. I want to play this clip that shows us the unionization. It's too early in the morning for 4-syllable words. The unionization effort amongst Starbucks workers is spreading throughout the country. Illinois, Colorado, Massachusetts, Ohio, and more. The Starbucks CEO, of course, Kevin Johnson, says that the company opposes unionization, but told employees that they are the heartbeat of the company. Let's see.
A small group of workers making a loud statement as the Starbucks crew at a Buffalo cafe vote to form a union.
We have proven that we are Starbucks. We are the heart of this company.
Now, workers at 2 Boston area Starbucks are looking to do the same. In a letter to employees, the CEO of Starbucks said they oppose unionization, but remain committed to their employees, calling them the, quote, heartbeat of this company.
We love you sincerely, but don't organize. Nomiki.
Okay, so this is so fascinating to me, because the fact that unionizing happened at Starbucks shows something is really happening in this country. Because I'm going to be really fair on this argument. Comparing Starbucks to most major corporations of this size, they do a lot for their workers. They provide school, if you like to free education. They provide healthcare in a way that most companies like this, their employment community is much more, and they did it intentionally because they don't want people to be unionizing, right? They're like, what? So they've written about corporate social responsibility. I mean, they are the gold standard of corporate social responsibility. And I think this is really important because for us, we can't just lump all these companies together and say Amazon is Starbucks, because it's not. With that being said, I think it is exceptional that the workers are saying, okay, we got healthcare, but that should be the bare minimum. Like, you don't get a gold star because you're giving us healthcare. We want these things too, because we deserve to live safe, secure lives. I have a family friend who went through a divorce and had kids and went to go work at Starbucks a few years ago because of the healthcare. She has a master's degree. This is. I'm sure there are plenty of stories like this, but it's good that they offered that. But the people, I think if we were going to do an assessment of who's working at Starbucks now versus who's working, everybody has different needs. And ultimately what we're seeing is that the middle class is broken down entirely in this country, and companies are a big part of that. So, Starbucks, you really got to step up. Yes, your employees are the heartbeat, but no corporate social responsibility is going to save you from the fact that, your workers demand to have fair wages and, better hours, et cetera, all the demands that they're focusing on. Also, just shout out to the Buffalo Starbucks workers, because that's where I grew up when I used to go to those Starbucks and I'd study for my exams there with my dad. Because we didn't have a local coffee shop anymore on Main Street.
Nomiki, we are all culprits. Like, we're all participants in it. There's not a Starbucks that I've been in a city in that I haven't been to. So I'm with you there. Listen, I'm going to be with you later on. Solidarity Wednesdays doesn't stop with what we're doing this morning. Tell everybody what's coming up with your show, what's happening, and how they can reach and support you.
Yeah, so we on Wednesdays, as you see this beautiful graphic by David, our dear pal and colleague, we do Solidarity Wednesdays starting off 8 a.m. here on your show. And then we move over to 8 p.m. On the Nomiki Show, which airs on YouTube. So you can check that out on YouTube. But we also air on Patreon and all the different podcasty places you can go, where Ben and I are going to continue our conversation about what it means to be great allies. Maybe every once in a while we'll bring in a guest to school us on what it means to be an ally with their community. And then we have, we start off our show. If you haven't checked it out before, we usually have an interview with an author, an activist, or somebody notable. And then we have a kick-ass panel talking about all the news of the day. But we talk a lot about labor. So this was perfect. And really strategy for the Democratic Party, and really how to take on what is the right wing. And I want to emphasize that, yes, there are a lot of bad Democrats who are doing nothing right now. But I also want to, my vision for 2022 is to not be too reliant on these bad Democrats, and just go target the Republicans yourself. If you're in a district where you could run for school board, or you could run for city council or town council, do it. It doesn't take millions of dollars. And I think we have to stop relying on the big D Democrats to save us, because they're not going to.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Nomiki, thank you so much for joining us for this first Solidarity Wednesdays. I will see you later on today. And Solidarity.
Take care. Solidarity.
Later on, coming up at the 9 o'clock hour, we'll be joined by Rebecca Azor. She will be interviewing several guests. We're going to be covering all of the stories, the news of politics, and some shenanigans. On the Clock is coming up in our next segment. Before we get there, though, I want to touch on one more thing in terms of solidarity. And I really do appreciate Nomiki and her team helping us pull this together. I have to emphasize something. This is a fight, again, that we cannot win by ourselves. I realized this last year when there was a all-out attack on the organized left, the left that was using social media as an organizing tool. I realized that there were fights that were happening that we cannot win in our silos. One of the things we're good at as leftists, as progressives, as liberals is operating in our silos. And when someone is not helping us with our particular issue, or when we are not helping someone else with their particular issue, we easily find out that when all of us need to work together, we're not prepared for it. When we all need to bring a level of defense, because let's be real, the one thing I did not get a chance to talk to Nomiki about properly was Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon is organizing. That is Donald Trump's former senior advisor in the White House. He is organizing. He's working with the Proud Boys. He's working with the Boogaloo Boys. He's working with right wingers all across the globe in order to execute his agenda. And it is a far right wing, theocratic, fascist agenda. There's no questions about that. And if you don't know the definition of every word I just said, I'm telling you, they are not out for anyone other than white Christian men. Don't believe me? Ask Bill O'Reilly in the clip that I share all the time, where Bill O'Reilly makes it clear that this country was made for the benefit of white Christian men. And this is what they are. So if you're not white, if you're not a Christian, if you're not a man, then what the conservatives are doing and what they're organizing around, what people like Steve Bannon and Stephen Miller and what they're doing, they're organizing, working out their differences. They're hammering out their issues. They're getting on one accord so that they can win on behalf of white supremacy. We honestly must be prepared to fight just as diligently and ferociously and organize the way they are.